examples. People sometimes think, am I up to it? Am I a coper? Will I manage? And years ago, God, 2 years into doulaing, I was still at that stage. I remember I would turn up at somebody's house and they're in room 1, early labour, and they might be tearful and not coping. And I stupidly would think, oh dear, like, if they can't cope now, what's going to happen? And, you know, you just have no clue when you're starting out. And then as you get experience, you realise that, like we've said, that's just because they're letting their stuff out. Once they're in the bigger place, once their body's taken over, the most extraordinary things happen. And I'm sure you've seen this, where the deeper they go, you watch partners, don't we? I'm sure you've seen this. And the noises become boomier and the pressure becomes clear and the baby's starting to really come. And the mothers are like, I was with this woman once, I call her Lucasade woman. And she was very well spoken, very ladylike, she's really sort of put together, you know. And she was going, wow, that, right? And the husband was like, I could see him totally freaked, right? And she was in this birth pool and she was just in this dark, I love St. Thomas's, has some really good darkness there. And there's a pool and dark and we were just absolutely lost in it, right? Okay. And he was sort of sitting on the side and she was like, not a care in the world. And how we knew that was because she went, wow. And then she went, can I have a Lucasade, please? And I always remember him going with the Lucasade, like passing her the Lucasade, because and then it was like, wow. Now, she wasn't sort of engaging with him. She didn't go, thanks, love, can I have it? Yeah. She just was on automatic. She had autopilot running. She knew very well she wanted to drink, and women are very clear. But what it proved to him is that she wasn't bothered. Her body was unconcerned, so she was unconcerned. Did it look like that? No. If you get everybody who I think it's hard being in the room if you've not felt labour to really, really deeply let go. You see some amazing midwives who get it. It might not have experienced labour themselves, and they get it because they've had it so many times. But I think for someone who's not seen it before, it's difficult to not think that's really hard. But pause, partners. See, is help required? I was at a birth recently where the dad kept getting up, down, up, down, up, down, even though we said, just rest, it's fine. But she needs me, you know. Just ask yourself, does she? She might. One lovely thing to do when it gets very gusty is to do this and provide 2 roped, you know, forearms for her to hold here. Hands become quite complicated in labour because fingers are complicated. Wrists can feel floppy, but here, and pulling back on it can feel like a tree to hold. Yeah, and so if people offer to help. Think of it, you're not saving them, you're not rescuing them, you do not need to back down their noises, you don't need to back down what might look to you like distress. And how you can check in is if she really was becoming like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, how do we know as doulas? Because they keep saying that and they look up and out at you and they really say, please, and you know, but a woman in labour doesn't do that. In a labour that's working, where she can feel her baby coming and she's well prepared and well resourced, notice the space when the sounds have gone. Notice the space when the pressure has gone. She will often just go into abeyance. She'll go into a slightly sedated state. She will not be going, help me. She won't. You know, I mean, and if she is, then that's a different thing. And that will be to do with position, or she's been going on too long and that's suffering and that shouldn't happen. And there's every good reason to have an epidural in those sort of situations. But in an ordinary labour where the woman is feeling more, always check that if you are a supporter that she might not need anything. And for those of you who are fearful at all of maybe what partners will be allowed in or not, or what midwife will I find, this is how you will feel. You will feel interiorly resourced. Your baby will give you what you need. Your body will give you what you need when you feel that momentum. If your baby is moving down and out, you will be lifted up and on it. So you don't need to fear, who will be there for me? You don't need to fear, like, what's the hospital like? It's all inside you. If flow and when flow is in process.
It's such an internal process. And I think it's just what you say about people talk about it from a looking perspective and not from the inside out. And, you know, vocalization, that kind of roaring and stuff, it's so misunderstood. Because I've heard loads of times, even midwives say, oh, you're okay, just find your breath. And I'm like, no, actually, this is helping. This is vocalization. This is working. You know, it's different, you know, high pitched or screaming, or that's fear. But that earthy, grounded, rooting, like Mother Nature coming through you, like, whoa, you know, I remember it when I had Mabel, and Andy came to the door because I was in the bathroom at the time. I was alone for a lot of that labour, through choice. And he just came to the bathroom door and went, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, what was that noise? I didn't even know it had come from me, because it's so otherworldly. And I was like, oh, that's fun. You know, what's that like?
I know I've bored people with this sound, this anecdote, so forgive me if people have heard this before, but exactly, I was in this birth pool, first baby, and I'm also kind of although I'm like this, I'm not very good at letting go in normal times, you know what I mean? And I heard this mighty, strange, guttural thing going on, I mean, like a moo, and I must have opened my eyes, and my husband was sitting on this bed sofa opposite in the hospital, and he went like this, like, because I'm not even like that normally. I mean, I'm not very I don't get drunk easily. I'm not a laugh in that way. I don't kind of whoa, you know, I'm not like party. I'm just, and I looked really a bit like whoa, you know, I was going, and I saw I must have woken up. That's the only point I remember pain. It was the only time I remember what you would call, I don't like this. And the midwife said Danny told me after that she told him to get some toast and go out of the room and got some tea and toast. And when he came back, she got him to come behind me. I must by now have closed my eyes. I don't remember another thing. And the baby came about an hour later. And it was that moment of being made conscious of my noises is what was hard. So if somebody jumps in to rescue you and says, it's okay, calm, just breathe. And my other hated phrase, which I know that this is a bit mean, but I'm going to say it. Can we just, all of us as birth partners, so for parents, as partners, doulas, midwives, doctors, all of us need, and I'm also guilty of this, I have done this, even till recently, it's so easy to get into the habit of what you just said, like, it's okay, that's fine, you're fine, amazing, that's amazing, the sort of false reassurance that hasn't been required or requested, or breathe it through, when the woman hasn't looked up and out, she hasn't asked for it. We're doing it for ourselves half the time. Do you know what I mean?
That needs to do something.
Yeah, and it's sort of, it's like, look at me, I'm so soothing for you. No, you're not soothing for, you know, it's, I have to sit on my hands and I have to do this because I do have a tendency to overdo, and I have to come back to myself. And when I've laid on the floor and just allowed it to roll through me, the births, oh my God, they're so much easier, simpler, quicker, more efficient, economy on all fronts, rather than that, I'm going to keep massaging you, or, you know, and when I hear that, the most dislocating and disrupting support phrases are when somebody's at the other side of the room, whether it's a partner or a midwife or a doula, going, you know, something like, you know, breathe it through, or it's okay, don't you worry. When basically avoid any cliche. Why do we have to avoid cliche? Because cliche, the brain will jump on in 2 seconds flat and go, what? Like the mother comes up and out of herself because she knows she knows that person isn't really just concentrating on protecting. It's too of present tense here and now. It's too cliche. There's
no trust with it, is there? They're not trusting
this. The rational brain will jump on it. Do you see what I mean? Because she's like, you don't mean that. Do you know what I mean? I can see it when I've done it. They kind of know it's a bit rote, you know, R-O-T, like it's too rote. The only time words help is when they're meant from your heart. You know, then it's worth saying. I always say to partners, far from doing a sort of usual coachy phrases, some of the best birth support I've seen from partners is when they're just ensconced and just say, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You know, you are so beautiful. I've seen dads do that. And the babies just come. You know, the contractions become in, and instantly the woman laughs. She even comes to for it. Doesn't matter, because her oxytocin goes through the roof. Because what is the dad doing in that moment when he just is like that? You are so gorgeous. Oh my God, you're giving birth to our baby. You are amazing. It doesn't matter if he says it loudly. He doesn't need to whisper. Whispering can also be really annoying. What is he doing? He says, I know you know. I know you know what you're doing with our child. You are amazing. There's this one dad, Greek dad. I adore him. The most anxious dad I ever had. He literally practically put his wife under house arrest before she went into labour, because he was so frightened of it all. When we've had 3 babies now, 3 of us, and on the second one, I'll never forget what he did. She was sort of labouring in her bedroom. She was doing this, and then he came and whispered something, and he really buried in that kind of nice, I'm going to say it, sort of sexy way, like a kind of, he went right in.
Totally like,
just went, and he just said something to her, and he left the room, and it just started to come. The baby started to come. And afterwards, I said, "What did he say to you?" And he says, "I've got everything sorted."
Oh.
And he'd met the 2-year-old. She was worried about her own mother. Her elderly mother was in the other room, and she was kind of getting anxious. And he just said, "Everyone's fine. I've got everything sorted." But he did it in this, right in her ear, like it was a thought of her own, like right, and so that you could feel his breath. The contractions went through the roof.
Oh,
you know, because
what was he doing?
He didn't need to rescue her. He knew by the second child, he knew that his role was to protect the cave, sort of thing. So he didn't need to rescue her from these noises or worry about her. He wasn't worried one bit. He knew that he just wanted to give her every chance to let go. Oh, I really remember that. It was like shivery, you know.
Yeah, so I feel that now. It's like goosebumpy. But I think what you've really pointed out is like him saying something like that and then leaving. Women are like left to it in the best possible sense of they are just getting on with it, and often really, really, really need to be left to it. And I think there's this misunderstanding that you need like your internal resources, like we talked about. You need things there if you need them. But really, women just want that space, safe space to be held so they can get on with it. So if you were going into hospital and it was you know, alone, you know, hubby had to leave you at maternity reception, say, in, you know, that scenario, and you were escorted to a room with a lovely midwife, you would have almost the perfect situation, because you could just get on with it in a safe space with your midwife, and that would be fine, you know, because it would be all from you and your baby are working together anyway.
You know, you made the lovely analogy earlier of swimming underwater. I always think that part is like we all know, most of us will have experience of swimming, even not deep sea, but like, you know, that feeling when you're absolutely alone, nobody can do anything other than you than be that.
Yeah.
It's that internal where you can't communicate with another human being underwater. You are here. Yeah. And you know, you have your lungs and you have your power and you have your swim. And that is, you have to dive in, swim it through, you are just in your element, literally, the water, you know. So it is not, the other thing was when we said about transition, you said something, it's the up and over, you know. If you get in the way of that and people disrupt you, or the setting disrupts you, you then hover. That's when transitional moments do become too much, because it means you can't release on and through and go down that water flume and just ride it. You are almost held in a terrible suspension, because the contractions need to reach pitch point, and they cannot reach pitch point if you don't go through it. So you just end up in this horrible state of not releasing, and that's when birth gets not nice.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm just thinking of it then as you're speaking of like an internal conversation, and if someone interrupts, you don't hear the answer, so you just get stuck until you find your own answer. You need to hear your own answer, that I can't do it, and you say to yourself you can. But you've got to find, you've got to hear that answer. You've got to have the space to hear your own answer.
So management, whether it's emotional support management or a doctor coming in at the wrong way, Or actually something much simpler than that, because if a doctor's come, it's because they probably need to. It's more, to my mind, it's being told dilation scores and things like that. They make a woman hover on and stall. You do not want to stall. I mean, I'm a massive fan. Also, what doesn't disrupt is just don't know the numbers. If you want to have a vaginal examination, you're happy to. All you're really wanting to know is, are you changing? So you don't need to kind of be told a number, because you could be 3 centimeters and have a baby, as we always say, a couple of hours later. You could be 10 centimeters and have a baby. If you're disrupted, it doesn't mean a thing. You could have a baby 5 hours later. So the numbers are irrelevant. Don't get hooked. Don't get trip on a sort of snag in the carpet, because you don't want to get stuck like a record. You need to keep it going, and that the only person who can really secure that is yourself, really. We should probably finish, but I'm just thinking there was something else we haven't mentioned, is the pressure sensations. I think that might be helpful for people. I support a lot of women who've had previous cesareans, who haven't or might have had an epidural at the end, and they're sort of slightly fearful of those last sensations. And I sometimes get them over that with just a kind of a combination of slightly jokey, oh, I know what you feel type thing. Like, that's what doing the stock in trade, isn't it? That we have compassion, we know how they feel, but we're saying,
it's okay.
Oh, I know. I always think it's like Miranda in Call the Midwife, when she had that, remember? And she said, I remember this woman in one of the episodes was like, oh, I just don't know, I can't. And Miranda did it brilliantly. She went, oh, I know. She goes, it's a rotten business. And then she went, right, come on then, let's have a baby. It was like, and I think that I try to sort of, in those moments when it does become so huge, sometimes, I'll tell you a story that happened to me last summer, on that hottest day of the year last summer. I was with someone in labour, and she'd never felt that feeling. And so I addressed it directly, because she did go a bit like, oh, and what happens is that as the baby's coming down and round, you are going to feel more and more pressure in your back than your bottom. And I don't think people talk enough about that. It can feel quite bulgy and like absurd, like a sort of the stretch of that feels a lot for some people. Some people seem to sail on through it. I found it really like, whoa. And if you do feel like that, you almost need to be grabbed, sort of go within yourself and going, that's it, my baby's coming. Because that's what it is. It's nothing wrong. And I remember I happened to be standing on a staircase with her. We were about to go in, and I said, I know what you're feeling. And she went, oh, that. And I said, I know. I said, I did that. It's a rotten business face, because we don't want to all be fluffy about it. It is bloody hard. It's really hard.
And that's
and I said, oh, I know. I said, is it a bit bulgy? And she went, oh, like that. And then I went, it's going to pass, don't worry. Like that. And she said, if I hadn't said that, she did start to feel it. And then she just said, she sort of understood, because the next contraction, of course, it does feel different, because it's moving quickly now. And you feel more of that. It is still kind of bulgy for quite a bit, because the baby is literally stretching and opening. But it passes. And it's so amazing when somebody says, yes, that's it. In your arms soon. And I mean, shouldn't even really wake someone up with those comments. I didn't say that. But I mean, I would like you all women listening to this to know that when they're feeling those feelings that, as you said, are huge, don't recoil. Just release. Just, whoa, it's happening, it's working, I'm here, I'm having, because everybody wants to meet their baby, and if you give way to that, So have we kind of probably covered everything, haven't we? Sorry, we've put the other ones every time we get.
I think we have so much to say, don't we? Yeah. But I hope this uploads, because it's a long one. It might be 2 cups of tea, this one, but it'll be the best 2 cups of tea ever.
All right then, we better say goodbye. We'll probably think of other things, but anyway.
We'll say goodbye, and thanks so much for listening. Okay, bye.